There is a silence inside you, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with unanswered longing, a silence that aches beneath the surface of your affirmations and meditations. You may have felt it, that quiet dissonance between what you say you want and what you're truly willing to become. It's not laziness, it's not failure, it's fear. Fear not of lack, but of your own power. Most people don't talk about this. Most spiritual journeys begin with light, but somewhere along the way, we run into a shadow, the shadow of our own magnitude. The hidden agony behind so many manifestations that never arrive isn't that the universe is ignoring us. It's that, deep down, we are terrified of what would happen if it actually worked. We crave freedom, but secretly fear what that freedom would demand from us. We yearn for love, yet unconsciously sabotage the very intimacy we say we want. We desire abundance while carrying invisible shame for even wanting it. This isn't weakness. It's conditioning. It's biology. It's the neural residue of lives lived in suppression. Neville Goddard once said, "You are free to choose, but you are not free from the consequences of your assumptions." And most of our assumptions, those deep, quiet ones, were never chosen. They were absorbed, inherited, imprinted from childhood stories, ancestral fears, religious guilt, and societal scripts that taught us to dim down our light, to keep safe by staying small. So, we affirm new lives, while our nervous system is still bracing for the old pain. And here lies the tragedy and the invitation, because the very power that can create miracles is also the power that, when misused, breeds chaos. Your imagination is not neutral, it's a force, a frequency, and when it's fueled by guilt, by doubt, by the unspoken emotional debris within, it becomes a weapon turned inward, a kind of slow self-destruction that disguises itself as spiritual seeking. But when that same imagination is held with emotional maturity, when your body, your heart, and your subconscious begin to resonate with your vision, then imagination becomes liberation, not escape, but embodiment. We don't fail to manifest because we lack desire. We fail because our shadow desires carry more energetic charge than our conscious intentions. It's not about willpower, it's about frequency, and frequencies don't lie. You can't fake coherence. Your body knows, your cells know. As Bruce Lipton teaches, your biology listens more to your emotions than your affirmations. And if your emotions are coded with shame, with fear, with inherited unworthiness, then no amount of vision boards will break the pattern. Dr. Joe Dispenza describes how the brain, addicted to familiar neurochemicals, especially those linked to suffering, resists new realities. Not because it wants to keep you stuck, but because it believes stuck is safer. Suffering, after all, is predictable, and the unknown, even when beautiful, feels threatening to a nervous system wired for survival. So we stay, we loop, we repeat. This is not a flaw, it's a signal, a sacred one. Because the moment you recognize this inner war, not judge it, not suppress it, but truly witness it, you stand at the threshold of your own transformation, not through bypass, not through effort, but through integration, through reverence for the parts of you that have been waiting not to be fixed, but to be felt. What if the part of you you've been avoiding is the very key to your alignment? Let's begin. Sometimes what you crave the most is what you fear the deepest. It's a paradox so subtle, most never notice it. But if you sit quietly, beneath the noise, beneath the spiritual affirmations and declarations of trust, you may hear it, a faint hum, a hesitation, that invisible wall inside you that tenses at the very edge of receiving. You might say you want love. You might meditate on abundance. You might long for purpose. But your body tells another story. Your breath contracts. Your heart braces. Your stomach tightens. And without knowing why, you turn away from what you desire. This is not a failure of faith. This is not a lack of worthiness. This is the residue of memory, emotional memory, held in the tissues of your being. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that wanting too much is dangerous, that being seen fully is unsafe, that having what you truly long for comes with a cost. So now, even as your conscious mind reaches forward, your subconscious quietly pulls back. This creates what physicists might call a field of interference. But in human terms, it feels like self-sabotage. The real challenge is not that you don't know what you want. It's that a part of you was trained to fear what happens if you get it, to fear the change it will bring, the attention, the responsibility, the loss of familiar struggle. It's the grief of no longer needing to prove yourself, the vulnerability of being loved without a mask, the surrender of letting good things last. Trauma doesn't just break things. It rewires your frequency. It tells the universe, "I want this," while simultaneously broadcasting, "I don't believe I can hold it." And the universe, always in perfect resonance, responds not just to your thoughts, but to your vibration. It listens to the emotional signal, not the intellectual wish. And so, many who walk the spiritual path find themselves caught in this loop, a loop of craving and avoidance, manifesting and blocking, yearning and resisting, not because they're weak, but because they've never been taught how to feel safe in receiving, how to let the nervous system exhale into abundance, how to trust love without armoring the heart. The whisper that tells you, "You don't deserve this," isn't you. It's an echo, a remnant of a moment when you were too small to process the pain. And now that echo lives on, not as truth, but as a vibration. And vibrations don't respond to logic. They respond to resonance. To shift your reality, you must first honor the wound. You must understand that fear is not the enemy of manifestation. It is the guardian. And every guardian holds a key. If you can stand still in front of that fear, not to fight it, not to fix it, but simply to feel it, then the door it guards begins to open, and what was once a block becomes a bridge, a threshold into the version of you that no longer avoids what they crave, but welcomes it without resistance. Desire, in its purest form, is sacred. It's the whisper of life calling you toward expansion, expression, and truth. But when desire becomes separated from the emotional landscape that surrounds it, something strange happens. Instead of pulling life toward you, you begin to repel it. Not because the desire is wrong, but because the energy behind it is incoherent. So many teachings today tell you to visualize, to affirm, to hold the image of your ideal life in your mind. But few speak of the emotional basement beneath that vision, the part filled with doubt, pain, resentment, and unhealed longing. And when you skip this basement, when you build your dream house on a foundation of suppressed wounds, it doesn't matter how beautiful the architecture is, the vibration collapses, the signal becomes distorted. Neville Goddard spoke often about the importance of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But what's often overlooked is the deeper layer, emotional congruence. You can assume a state in your thoughts, but if your emotions are not resonant with that state, the frequency fractures, and what was meant to attract begins to deflect. Not because the law failed, but because the energy was fragmented. This is why so many people feel betrayed by the law of assumption. They try to think positively, yet nothing changes. They visualize love, yet keep meeting rejection. They affirm abundance, yet feel financially stuck. And underneath it all, there's a silent question. What am I doing wrong? But it's not about doing, it's about being, about integration. The mind can craft a vision, but only the heart can sustain it. And if your heart is carrying grief, if your body is still wired for disappointment, then no amount of mental repetition can override that signal, because manifestation is not a performance, it's a resonance. And resonance demands honesty, not perfection, just honesty. When you bypass pain to maintain a high vibration, you don't rise, you disconnect, you split yourself. And that split is what blocks the flow. It's not the desire itself that repels. It's the attempt to leap over your shadow, to pretend you've healed what still needs to be held. And the universe, wise and patient, waits, not in punishment, but in precision. It mirrors back not what you want, but who you are in this moment, fully, vibrationally, emotionally, To magnetize a new reality, you must become a safe space for your own depth. You must make room for the sorrow that lingers beneath the longing, for the anger that hides behind the hope. Because when those pieces are felt, when they're given voice, they stop interfering, they stop hijacking the signal, and desire, once fragmented, becomes whole, not as a fantasy, but as a field, a living, breathing frequency that draws your vision toward you, not through effort, but through truth. There comes a moment on every inner path when the light goes out, not because you've lost your way, but because something deeper is being born. In this place, vision feels like a cruel joke. You've seen what's possible, you've touched it in your imagination, and yet nothing in your outer world reflects it. No signs, no confirmations, just silence, emptiness, void. This is where most turn back, not because they don't want it enough, but because no one ever told them that the void is part of the journey, that holding a vision in total darkness is not a failure. It's a sacred power, a forbidden one, the kind only the truly committed will ever understand. Because it's not about seeing results, it's about becoming the frequency of what you saw before anything outside you has changed. In the language of the soul, darkness is not punishment, it's gestation. It's the womb of transformation. Just as an embryo grows unseen, untouched by sunlight, your new self develops in the hidden chambers of your emotional life. And during this time, nothing will feel certain. Your ego will panic. Your mind will doubt. Your body may ache with the tension of not knowing. But your soul understands. It knows that the seed never doubts the spring. Most people abandon their manifestation halfway because they confuse absence with failure. They assume that if the dream was aligned, it would arrive quickly. But quantum coherence doesn't respond to impatience. It responds to surrender. And surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the deep stillness, to the space between what was and what will be, to the mystery that holds your becoming. There is a silence more powerful than certainty, a kind of sacred emptiness where you are asked to trust, not the outcome, but your alignment with it. And in this trust, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your frequency stabilizes, your field strengthens, you stop grasping, and you start radiating, not because you know how it will unfold, but because you're no longer dependent on when. This is the first forbidden power, to stay faithful to your vision with no external validation, to cradle your dream in the dark with nothing but the warmth of your own heart. It's the power of devotion, of resonance held without reward, of coherence held without applause. And it is in this silence that the universe begins to listen. Beneath the polished layers of spiritual vocabulary, behind the serene affirmations and peaceful smiles, there often lives a quiet rage, a bitterness too shameful to name, a resentment that simmers in silence. And it is here, in this unspoken fire, that many seekers lose their alignment. Not because they are insincere, but because they are afraid to face the parts of themselves that don't look enlightened. You were taught to be kind, to be grateful, to stay in the light. But what about the moments when you're not? When jealousy tightens your chest, when resentment poisons your thoughts, when anger curls inside your belly like a secret too dangerous to confess. Most repress it, bury it, label it low vibration. And in doing so, they cut themselves off from one of the most potent forces of transmutation. Radical ownership is not about indulging these emotions. It's about meeting them, seeing them, naming them without collapse or denial. Because until you own your hidden hatred, it owns you. It colors your frequency in invisible ways. It taints your manifestations with contradiction. You ask for abundance, while secretly resenting those who have it. You call in love, while carrying unresolved rage at those who once broke your heart. You speak of unity, while hiding fragments of your psyche in the basement of shame. To pretend this doesn't affect your vibration is spiritual naivety. Energy doesn't respond to appearances. It responds to coherence. And coherence means wholeness, not perfection, wholeness. The inclusion of all parts, even the dark ones, especially the dark ones. When you begin to witness your envy, your judgment, your silent rage, not as enemies, but as messengers. Something profound happens. The energy they once consumed becomes available, not for destruction, but for creation. This is the alchemy of the shadow. To take what once shamed you and let it speak, let it breathe, let it dissolve, not through suppression, but through compassion. This is not about glorifying pain. It's about recognizing the cost of pretending it isn't there. Every time you disown an emotion, you split your frequency, and that split weakens your field. But when you stand in front of your own shadow, steady and unafraid, you reclaim that power. You stop leaking energy in the name of spiritual appearance, and you begin to embody a deeper truth, one that says, I am not here to be light, I am here to be whole, and wholeness is magnetic. There is a longing in the heart that few dare to name. It hides beneath the rituals, beneath the mantras, beneath the polished words of surrender. It is the longing to be saved, not by faith, but by signs, not by soul, but by proof. We say we trust the universe, but secretly, we wait for permission, for a synchronicity to confirm the next step, for a mentor to reflect our worth, for a dream, a number, a feather, a name, anything that tells us it's okay to believe. This longing is ancient. It comes from lifetimes of external dependence, from systems that taught you to obey, from childhood moments when your safety depended on someone else's approval. And so, even now, even as a seeker of light, you may still carry the residue of that dynamic. You may find yourself waiting, not in presence, but in pause, waiting for the universe to reassure you before you act, waiting for a sign to say, yes, you're on the right path. But what if the path doesn't need a sign? What if your vibration is the message? What if your trust, held without confirmation, is the activation? There is a silent addiction woven into the spiritual world, the addiction to external validation cloaked as divine guidance. It feels subtle, it feels sacred, but at its core, it often masks a deeper fear. The fear of standing in your own authority, the fear of claiming your truth without applause, the fear of moving without evidence. And yet, this is where true alignment is born, in the quiet spaces where no one claps, in the inner chambers where you choose your vibration, not because the world agrees, but because your soul remembers, because your body resonates, because your being says yes, even when the outer world is silent. To stop outsourcing your power is not to reject guidance. It's to recognize that guidance does not arrive to replace your inner knowing. It arrives to echo it. And sometimes the echo is delayed. Sometimes the universe waits, not to test you, but to strengthen you, to see if you can hold your alignment without a mirror. There is a power in self-trust that no sign can offer, a frequency so stable, so anchored that life itself begins to rearrange around it. Not because you begged, not because you proved, but because you finally embodied the signal you once sought outside yourself. This is not easy. It is sacred. To no longer wait to be chosen, to no longer need to be told, to walk forward, not because a door opened, but because you became the door. There is a weariness that haunts many souls on the spiritual path, a fatigue not of the body, but of the spirit, the exhaustion of starting over again and again, of glimpsing the mountaintop only to fall back into the valley of doubt, of building momentum only to watch it dissolve in the chaos of the world. This cycle is not laziness. It is the natural consequence of a frequency that cannot yet hold its shape. Energetic consistency is not about perfection. It's about resonance that endures. A signal strong enough to remain steady even when life grows noisy. And this is one of the rarest and most sacred forms of discipline. Not the discipline of effort, but the discipline of alignment. Imagine a signal tower. If you change the frequency halfway through the broadcast, the message never arrives. It doesn't matter how clear the intention was when you began. If the frequency wavers, the transmission scatters. This is what happens to many manifestations. They begin with clarity, with heart, with vision. But when the outer world doesn't respond quickly enough, the doubt creeps in, the frequency weakens, and the tower collapses. Most don't realize that the universe responds to stability, not urgency. You can't rush alignment. You can't panic your way into coherence. The field you are creating is not built through intensity. It is built through repetition, through presence, through devotion. And yet, the world pulls you in every direction. The news, the fear, the unresolved wounds. They all tug at your signal. They shake your center. And unless you've anchored your energy, you get swept away again and again. To be energetically consistent is not to be rigid. It is to be rooted in your frequency, regardless of what's happening around you. It's the capacity to feel the storm and still hold your note, to feel the doubt and still choose the vibration of trust, to feel the pain and still remain open. This doesn't come from willpower alone. It comes from practice, from rituals that steady your nervous system, from breath, from presence, from moments of silence that remind your body how it feels to be home. And over time, this consistency becomes your baseline, your signature, your message to the universe that you are no longer swayed by appearances, that your vibration is not negotiable. And in that steadiness, creation begins to respond, not chaotically, but precisely, because now your frequency is clear, and clarity, held over time, becomes a magnet too strong to ignore. To love without needing to own is one of the most misunderstood powers in the realm of manifestation. We speak often of unconditional love, of letting go, of non-attachment. But when the heart is raw, when desire is tender, these words can feel like betrayal, because deep down, there is a part of you that wants to hold on, that wants assurance, that wants to be chosen again and again by something or someone outside of yourself. But possession, no matter how gently disguised, carries a frequency of fear. The fear of losing, the fear of emptiness, the fear that if you do not cling, it will vanish. And this fear, so human, so understandable, is often what collapses the very reality you are trying to create. You may manifest love, but if you grasp it too tightly, it slips. You may attract abundance, but if you cling to it from lack, it scatters. You may call in purpose, but if it must validate your worth, it falters under the weight. The truth is hard to hold, yet deeply liberating. What you cannot release, you do not yet trust. And trust is the essence of attraction, not the kind of trust that says, "I'll be fine either way," but the deeper cellular trust that knows what is mine stays by resonance, not by force, not by control, but by alignment. Attachment is not love. It's the echo of past wounds, trying to prevent future pain. And when you manifest from that space, you are not truly co-creating. You are bargaining, trying to trade vision for security, longing for outcomes to fill a void. But that void, that aching space inside you, is not a flaw. It's an invitation, an opening, a place where your own presence is being called home. When you learn to love without needing to own, you become the very frequency you were chasing. You stop needing love to complete you because you've remembered your own wholeness. You stop needing abundance to prove your worth because you've touched the inner sufficiency that can't be measured. And in that vibration, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to meet you not from desperation, but from overflow. Spiritual maturity reveals itself not in how well you manifest outcomes, but in how lightly you can hold them, in how deeply you can care without collapsing, in how fully you can love, even when there are no guarantees. This is not indifference, it is depth. It is the power of presence unbound by possession, and it is this power that magnetizes reality without resistance, because now you are not trying to take, you are becoming. And what you become, you attract, not as a test, but as a reflection. There is a moment in every deep journey when you realize nothing was ever outside of you. Not the block, not the breakthrough, not even the miracle. Everything, every longing, every delay, every shadow was pointing you inward, toward the place where your own power was waiting to be remembered. Bruce Lipton teaches us that beliefs shape biology, that your cells listen to your emotions more than your intentions. And when you start honoring the emotions you once avoided, when you begin owning the parts of yourself you were told to suppress, your very biology begins to shift. Not subtly, but at the level of code, of vibration, of destiny. The forbidden powers we've spoken of are not forbidden because they're dangerous. They are forbidden because they are misunderstood, because they ask more from you than techniques or affirmations. They ask for presence, for integrity, for a kind of courage that has nothing to do with bravado and everything to do with surrender. Greg Braden speaks of coherence between heart and brain as the true technology of manifestation, not thought alone, not feeling alone, but the symphony between them. When your heart trusts what your mind envisions, when your body believes what your soul is broadcasting, then the universe doesn't just respond. It reflects, it harmonizes, it organizes itself around the clarity of your signal. But this clarity is not achieved through control. It is achieved through ownership, through the sacred willingness to stop outsourcing your power to signs, to timelines, to mentors, to mystical symbols in the sky. You are not here to be led. You are here to become, not as an egoic performance, but as a return to the self that was never broken, only buried, only silenced. There is no true manifestation without responsibility. And responsibility does not mean blame. It means responsibility, the capacity to respond to your life not from old scripts, but from new presence, from new resonance, from the part of you that knows deeply, quietly, powerfully, that even your shadows are sacred. The shadow powers are not evil. They are sacred technologies of the soul, and only those willing to become whole can wield them, not with force, but with reverence. Because to own what you once feared is to liberate the energy you once used to resist. And that liberation, that wholeness, is where true creation begins. So ask yourself, not with judgment, but with wonder, what part of you have you denied? That is actually your source of liberation.